I'm curious, have you ever had a client who is a dark brunette wanting to go dimensional blonde in one appointment and you're wondering, can I even do that? Well, if that's you, friend, today's video is for you. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jamie Dana and I am here to support you on your hair journey. Today's video is actually from the vault. This is a video I filmed a while ago and never released here on YouTube, so you get a special treat. So my model today has dark virgin hair and we're gonna take her to a dimensional blonde. I'm gonna be sharing with you my full highlight technique on short hair, and I'm gonna share with you my favorite root shadow and toner formulas. All right, so let's jump in and get started. All right, so this is our before. As you can see, we are working with virgin hair, which is always so exciting. Siobhan has not colored her hair since 2018, so it has been a while. So we are gonna tackle this. We're gonna give her a brand new, beautiful blonded look, something that's gonna grow out really nice and subtle for her, but also make her feel like she got a brand new hair transformation. So we're gonna go from brown to blonde in one appointment. I'm so excited. Let's go mix up. Okay, so I'm gonna mix up and I'm gonna be using 15 volume to start. We're also gonna be using Olaplex in this just to make sure that we are ensuring the health of her hair. We're gonna start with probably 15 volume and then we're gonna work our way up probably to 20, 25, maybe even 30 in the last section. We'll kind of see how things go. She has fine hair, but she has a decent amount of it and we're covering a lot. So we definitely wanna make sure that we're not over processing her hair. So we'll start low and then work our way up as we go. So I'm gonna mix up. So to make 15 volume, we're just mixing equal parts of 10 volume and 20 volume. And if you've been around my channel at all for any amount of time, you know that I don't like to necessarily measure with a scale. I just kind of eyeball it. For me, when I'm mixing up my lightener, I'm looking for consistency. So for me, I definitely go more of a consistency basis versus necessarily a 2-to-1 ratio or whatever the mixing instructions are. That's just me. It's how I've always worked as a stylist. It's what works for me, but of course, do what works best for you. So this is a consistency that I go for, knowing that it's gonna thicken up just a little bit as it kind of sits and processes, but we just did about a scoop of bleach, and then now we'll add in the Olaplex. And one little tip I like to use is I always mix with a different brush or a different whisk, and then I will grab the brush that I'm actually going to use so that I have a clean application and I'm not working with a messy brush. Cool, so let's go get started. Okay, so all I did to start off is I just sectioned her front from the back because we're basically gonna be doing a full highlight on her, but she obviously has some shorter hairs in here, so I'm going to start and we're just gonna work our way up, doing some diagonal backs around her hairline, and then we'll work our way up through the head. But honestly, it's gonna be my full highlight pattern. So if you've seen any of my other full highlighting videos, it's gonna be very similar. The only thing is she just has shorter hair. So I might be working with some smaller sections. But yeah, we're basically doing a full baby light. Okay, so I'm gonna go in and we are just going to weave this section. Some of our little hairs out here. And I went and I tore my foils in half because this is such a small little section down here that I really wanted to make sure that we're working very precisely. So we're just going to go in and apply the lightener all the way to the scalp. Again, this is gonna be a full highlight, and then we're gonna go back in and just give her a little baby root shadow, just a tap on the root. But the reason why I'm going in and doing all the way to the root is because I want this to grow out really nicely for her. Because Siobhan is a mom and she doesn't have time to be coming in the salon all the time. So I love this option because it's a really great low maintenance option for a lot of your clients, but it also gives you the opportunity, and we'll talk about how you can maintain your clients with this so that they're not just only coming in every 8 months or something like that. There will be options to do like a mini maintenance appointment, but this gives her more of that longevity of what she's looking for while also giving you an option to offer maintenance. So we're just gonna fold the corner and tack that down right there. we go into our next little section right here. So I'm doing these pretty close back to back. I do like to get the hairline pretty blonde because honestly, even though her hair is really short, this is gonna be the piece that lays forward. This is gonna be the piece right here that the client notices when they see it on their neck or when they pull their hair forward. So this is a really important section. I think sometimes we forget about that like even though it's in the back, it is what the clients play with. It's the piece that falls right here for them, especially on a longer hair client. So I always like to make this really blonde, give it that nice pop around the hairline. I just think it looks really soft. And I will say that this can sometimes be a tricky section, especially on shorter hair. She's got this kind of fine shorter hair that sometimes doesn't want to hold well in a foil. So if you feel like this is a little tricky, I'll be honest, especially as you're first getting started or trying sectioning like this, it might feel a little bit awkward. So give yourself patience. You can kind of see I'm just letting it sit there for a second. It's not gonna move around too much, but if I need to go back in and readjust it or even just kind of clean it up with my finger, you can. I know sometimes this can feel really intimidating, especially as you are maybe a newer stylist or you're trying this out for the first time. So don't let it stress you out. Take your time. And if you need to go back in and redo it, it's okay. I remember being a newer stylist or trying out a new technique, and sometimes I would get really hard on myself because I'm like, it doesn't look like it did in the video, or it looked really easy to that stylist. And what I have to remember is like, sometimes there are some really awkward sections or things that are a little bit tricky. So give yourself patience, just keep practicing. I promise it'll become more natural for you. But yeah, sometimes these sections are a little bit weird and it just takes a little getting used to. So I'm gonna do a couple of these back-to-back diagonal back sections, and then I'm going to do it the same thing on the other side. And when I get to the middle, I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do. So what I did was I did a couple just straight across sections, and the section was becoming a little bit too wide to really fit in the foil nicely. Because of the rounding of her head, I wanted to make sure that I was getting close to the root. So I did do a couple diagonal backs, just two, and then now we're gonna continue to do some straight across. And we'll probably just keep doing that because as we get to this section, that's gonna be way too wide to do in one foil. So we'll just keep doing a couple up, couple diagonal backs until we kind of get to this section on the top. Okay, so I've just been working up the back of her head. Again, we're doing pretty tight. You can see that there's just a little bit of hair left out. I still wanna leave some hair out for dimension. We don't wanna get rid of all of her dimension for sure, especially as it grows out, we want that dimension. So you can see I've kind of done some it's like two diagonal back to like two straight across, two diagonal back, two straight across. And now we're in this last section. This to me isn't too wide. I definitely can tackle that in one foil. So I'm just going to continue to do straight across all the way up until we kind of hit her, the top of her head, and then we'll work our way forward. Okay, so what we did was I actually went through and now I've spun my client around and I'm working my way forward, just doing some straight down the mohawk section. She does kind of part her hair more towards the side, a little bit deeper of a part. So I always make sure to get both sides of that part, just depending on how she wears her hair. Obviously it's short, so we wanna make sure that it kind of goes both directions, but I'm a huge fan of making sure that we're covering both sides of the part, just so that we get the softest grow out and the softest look. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just going to take my section, I'm gonna weave it, And then if you've watched, again, any of my other videos, you're going to see this technique, but I foil backwards. I actually really like foiling backwards, specifically for short hair, because you're able to get really tight in at the root and control that hair. I feel like it's just a little bit easier and you have more control with it versus sometimes it's a little bit more challenging with that short hair when you're doing it the different way. So we're just going to take our section. I'm weaving each one of them, and we will skip a few sections here and there because I don't want her to be platinum blonde. We do want to have still some dimension, so we will leave some hair out. So I'm just going to take my next section. I am doing some slices just every once in a while because, again, we do want her to be pretty blonde, but then there are times that I'm just doing mostly weaves because I do want this to be a very nice, subtle grow out. So I'm just gonna continue to do this all the way till we get to the front of her head. And when we get to the front, I'm gonna show you some little techniques that I like to do just to keep it really soft around that hairline. So just gonna keep doing this and I'll get you around the front. So we've made it to just kind of her front section. Now with this, I am gonna do some back-to-back foils because we wanna make sure that this is nice and bright. I love a good money piece. So I am going to leave a little bit of this out right here because I don't want it to be too thick. She's not necessarily wanting a very thick money piece, but I do wanna have this be pretty bright. So you also will notice that throughout the back, I didn't fold these foils. I don't think it's necessary, but as we got closer to the front and had some shorter hairs, I did have to fold them just because it's a little bit easier to grasp onto as we're clipping hair out of the way. So I'm continuing to do the same thing, just foiling backwards. And as we get to these smaller, shorter hairs up here, especially with clients that have either bangs or baby hairs, I'm gonna tear some foils in half again, because as you can see, we're not even using half of this foil, and it does make it a little bit easier to grip onto the hair. So anytime that you have some smaller baby hairs or you feel like the foil might slip, just tear your foils in half. It makes it a lot easier. Okay, so I'm gonna do one teeny tiny section for dimension. I'm gonna leave that out, not a foil. And then the rest of these I'm just gonna do back to back. I still am going to weave them because I do wanna have just that kind of breaking up at the root so it's not like a solid line. But these are truly baby lights. So that's like the thing when it comes to around the hairline is you wanna ensure that you're doing these baby light sections. So we're just gonna pop our foil in nice and tight there. And this is where your clients are really gonna notice that beautiful grow out when you're doing these really soft baby lights, getting in there really nice and tight. The finer you do them around the front, the nicer it grows out. So even though we are doing these back to back, and we aren't probably going to root shadow this area because I do want this to be really nice and bright, it just grows out really softly. So I am doing 20 volume. We did increase to 20 volume from 15, but you wanna be careful with these baby lights because they will process very quickly because they're so fine. So just keep that in mind, that don't bump up your developer until you get around to more thicker sections. But you can see I'm just kind of going in, doing these really, really subtly. And when in doubt, if you think a section is too thick, break it up. So either weave it out a little bit or make it finer. Again, we want to keep these really, really fine and soft. And I know this might seem obsessive. It might seem like a lot of foils for such a small section. I know back in the day when I was foiling, I used to do, you know, maybe like 2 or 3 foils here, but now I do like 5 or 6. I've almost doubled the amount of foils that I do here. And I promise you my clients would notice a huge difference with just the way that it grows out. Like, look at these little baby hairs. Now, you're gonna see some of these hairs. These guys are probably not gonna fit in the foil, so we'll leave those out. Those will just be natural dimension. But even these guys, we can get into a foil. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to work our way into the side. Now, some clients do have more of a widow's peak, or they have some fine baby hairs right here. Now, she actually doesn't on this side, so I'm not gonna do really any foils right here. I'm not too worried about it. We're just gonna go straight in and do our diagonal back hairline ones. But for a client that has maybe some little baby hairs right here, like technically this could be a foil, but I'm okay with that being a little, actually, you know what? We'll put this guy in a foil. Honestly, we probably could leave it out and have it just be dimension, but because I do want this to be pretty bright around her face, I am gonna go in and just pop in one foil right there. And honestly, when it comes to the hairline, this is where you really customize it per client. So this is gonna be, it might look a little different for you depending on your clients, but feel free to be able to go in and really customize this and really just break it up with what you feel is right for your clients. Okay, so as we get around to her hairline, we are gonna do one little baby light. And honestly, for me, I love being a detail person. I used to hate this when I first started. I was like, really, does it matter? And I truly think it makes such a difference. So again, your clients are gonna see these little detailed pieces. It grows out just so nicely. So again, I like to put in the extra effort. I think it makes a huge difference, and it truly makes these pieces, when the client wears their hair back, just look so amazing. Now, she's probably not gonna wear her hair back too much because it's short, right? She's probably not putting in a ponytail, but if she pulls it back into like a headband or anything like that, like you're just gonna see the most subtle, beautiful baby lights that look like they grew out from her scalp versus it being a line or anything like that. So for me, these are the pieces that I think just make such a difference. And that's why people pay you the good money, right? Because they see the difference there than from a stylist when they pull their hair back and it's like a line or stripes growing out. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna continue doing these diagonal back sections. Again, if you've watched any of my other foiling videos, you have seen this technique. And if you haven't watched some of my other videos, you can go check those out. There's a ton of other full highlighting videos or just even highlighting videos. Very similar, obviously with this, she just has shorter hair. So we're doing the same technique, just getting really close in there. And you're seeing I'm using these smaller foils because her hair is so short. So I'm just going to repeat the diagonal back foils all the way up until we hit this corner. Some of these will be a little bit tighter in here, so I'm probably gonna keep those smaller foils just because it gets a little bit tricky when you get up into this corner. Another option you can do instead of going straight diagonal back into the corner is you can start to kind of fan them out. So kind of go like this way up into there. So totally up to you. For me, I am gonna go diagonal back because I don't wanna have too much depth in this section, especially because she parts her hair on this side. So I'm gonna continue to do that. It'll flow really nicely, but again, you can really tailor this to your client. So I'm gonna finish up. We're gonna do this exact same thing on the other side, and then I'll show you where we go from there. Okay, so we just finished foiling her entire head. This took me about 2 hours to do all of the foil work here. And you might think, oh my gosh, that's a lot, but honestly, we put a lot of foils in there. Even though she has short hair, it still took a lot of time. So just to recap, I did the diagonal backs and then straight across all the way up through the back. And then when we got to this kind of mohawk section, I just went straight all the way forward with baby lights in the front. And then on the sides, we did diagonal backs. Now you will see on this side, I did do a couple of these little foils just straight down to kind of match right here. So there are a couple little baby lights right in here that were just straight down ones, all weaved throughout. But now I'm gonna check the bottom and I'm gonna see kind of where it's processed to. So this has been on for quite some time now, and you can see that we definitely still have quite a bit of warmth in here. So even though her hair was virgin hair, we started with 15 volume, but for me, I would rather go low and slow versus blowing out the cuticle and potentially damaging her hair. So we've got some warmth in there. So we're gonna let this sit for a little bit. I probably won't put her under heat, maybe just for a little bit, we'll see. But even as we go into some of these lower foils, you can still see that we've got some warmth. So she's gonna process for a little bit. We'll just keep checking. But one of the cool things about this technique of starting with a lower developer and working our way up is that it should all process about the same amount of time. But if for some reason this was done, we could pull these foils, rinse that back section, and let the rest process. So we're gonna let her do that, and we'll check in a little bit. Okay, so she is ready to rinse. We actually did remove some of the bottom foils because they were ready to go. But one thing I wanted to show you guys is as I open up some of the foils, we are having a little bit of warmth in some of these foils, but the rest of it is ready to rinse. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna combat some of that warmth, most likely with the toner, but I'm not going to wait to pull these foils until this area is processed because we wanna make sure that we're not over processing her hair. So you could go back in and technically like reapply if you had to, but for her, I'm not going to because I want to make sure that we're not over processing things, and at this point it's ready to rinse. So we are going to do that, and again with the root shadow, everything's going to blend together and you're going to see how beautiful it is. So let's go over and rinse her. Okay, so I just rinsed her out and I wanted to show you what it looks like wet because for some of you, this might look so freaky. We have a lot of dimension in there still, and obviously you can see we have some warm tones. And so I just wanted to show you what this looks like wet because I know sometimes it can be really easy to panic and think, oh my gosh, should I put enough lightness in there? Like, is this what I really want it to look like? I'm a little freaked out. So I just wanted to show you what the raw rinse out looked like. As I towel dried it, we're gonna put some Olaplex #2 in there, and then I'm gonna mix up her toner while that is processing or just while that's going. But I wanted just to show you guys the raw lift in case you see this too and are starting to be like, oh my gosh, what did we do? If you see this at the shampoo bowl, this is totally normal. And as we tone her and do her root shadow, it's gonna turn into this beautiful blended color. So this is step 2 of the process, obviously. And then as we get into it, you're gonna see more. Okay, so I'm gonna be mixing up 2 different formulas. So we're gonna do her root shadow, which is gonna be 6N and 6NB with shade ZQ. And I'm also gonna use the thicker gloss to gel processing solution. Just makes it a little bit thicker to apply for a root shadow. And then for her ends, we're gonna do 10GI and 9P equal parts. That will just do a regular processing solution. So I'm gonna mix these up and then we're actually gonna apply these over at the chair. Okay, so I brought her back over to the chair because for me, especially with someone who has really short hair, I want to do a really detailed root shadow, and it's really challenging to do it over in the bowl. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna be starting kind of in the bottom section, applying a little baby root shadow, and then as I'm going up the head, I'm also gonna apply her end toner too. So we're kind of doing 2 for 1, just getting really close in there. Yeah, and it does help if your client looks down or whatever, but it just definitely is a lot easier than doing it over in the bowl because it's just really messy. And I just feel like you're able to get way more accurate little baby root shadows here. So we're gonna go through, I'm just gonna apply this in just very, very softly, tapping the root right here. And then as I apply that root shadow, I'm also just gonna apply her toners to the end too. So to kind of protect the ends and get those nice and blended too. The cool thing about applying a root shadow while you're applying the end toner too is that it blends it really nicely and you don't have any lines of demarcation. So we're just gonna keep working up the head. I like to keep a towel so that I keep things really clean. And I also like to section with a tail comb too, just to keep it a little bit cleaner than sectioning with the brush, because sometimes that can also be a little bit messy. So we're just gonna do this all the way throughout her head. And I'm gonna probably leave the front section out, so I'll show you guys when I get to the front. Okay, so I just finished the back section, and one of the things I like to do is just take a little half foil and kind of just put it over the back area, just so we don't accidentally overlap or squish some of that color onto the other pieces. So I'm going to do the front. Now, one thing I am going to do is I am gonna section out just the front hairline, because with her, I wanna still keep this really bright pop of blonde. So we're gonna section out just the front hairline, and then we'll go through and we will just tap it barely for like the last 3 minutes over at the shampoo bowl. But we're gonna keep this out and we're gonna go through, do the sides, and then we'll let it process for probably about 10-15 minutes. So as I'm going through this top section, one thing you might notice is that I'm actually not applying her ends. I'm just applying the roots real quick just to get it in on this section. And I'm going in really finely and getting all her roots first, and then I'm gonna go back in and apply the ends, just because her hair's so short. I just really wanted to get that root shadow on, tap it in, and then we'll go back in and kind of get her ends. Because it's not a very thick section, I can just kind of go in and apply it all at once. So you are noticing that I applied the just around that hairline, or not the hairline technically, just like that hairline section right here, kind of created a little barrier for myself. And then now I have this little section that we're gonna keep clean. So just keep an eye on, now you can see like I got a little color right there. So I'm gonna go in with my towel and just make sure that it's really clean. This is why, again, you work at the chair. Just makes it a little bit easier to control everything, to make sure that we're keeping that really nice and bright. So now I'm gonna go in and apply my end color right here. Actually split this in half because it is a lot of hair, but it doesn't need to be like each individual section like I was doing in the back. So I'm actually just gonna take another foil, place it right in there, just so we're not overlapping it, because her hair is so short. I don't want this squishing onto that darker root shadow right there. So gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so now we finished all these sections. I just put a little foil over the top real quick here so we don't squish it back on that color. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna apply the end color just to these pieces up here, because I do wanna make sure that we're toning them. And then like I mentioned at the bowl, we're just gonna tap them at the bowl for like 3 minutes when she's getting closer to being done processing. But I did wanna make sure to still tone these pieces. So we're just gonna apply that through here, and then we will keep an eye on everything else. And like I said, we're gonna go probably about 10 more minutes. I do recommend doing the full processing time, even though it can sometimes look very scary, especially a level 6. It can be very dark looking, but definitely you're gonna wanna make sure to do the full processing time, because that's how you get that beautiful root shadow. Otherwise, it'll be too transparent, too light. So let's do that. And yeah, we're gonna let her process. Okay, so now all I'm doing is I'm just barely tapping it on her front money piece area. I just really wanna just tap a little bit for like the last 2-3 minutes here. We're just doing this real quick, and then we're gonna rinse her. here is our final result. Oh my gosh, she's so much blonder, and you can see all of that beautiful dimension that we have in there. We went ahead and trimmed up her haircut too. Just kind of did a little texturizing, got rid of the rat tail that can happen in the back with these short pixies that are growing out into more of a bixie or bob. But yeah, I love it. I think that it turned out so good. I love seeing so much more dimension, and I'm just so excited to see how this fades and how it maintains for her with this lower maintenance style. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to know in the comments, what was one new thing that you learned from today's video? Maybe it was a simple little tip that you learned or the full technique. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. And I've actually done another video with this exact same model where we took her from a grown out platinum into a dimensional blonde. So kind of the opposite of what we did in today's video. And if you want to check that out, I will link it over here for you to watch. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.